All right, good day and week, everyone. Talking to you on a Tuesday. This is week 5 of our fall semester of language and thought. And I'm just looking at the syllabus here, and you'll notice that we have kind of made a transition, right? So that first month of our class was devoted to the tenets or the basics, some of the basic dictates and assumptions and premises of general semantics. Hopefully, some of that kind of basic stuff and its repetition is making good sense, and you're feeling okay about that. Don't forget rhetoric man, serious man. We've been pretty much just focused on serious man, general semantics as that project in the middle part of the last century. Now what we're going to be doing is, as you can see, bottom of that page there in the course schedule, we're moving beyond general semantics, right? And so we're proceeding more or less historically, and the reason that we're starting, not the only reason, but one of the reasons we're starting with this McLuhan piece is because it was published sort of contemporaneously with some of the other stuff we've been reading. So this is 1964. This is the first chapter to his book, Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man. And this is going to start complicating. So the section that we're entering here is called Beyond General Semantics. And we're going to start looking at things in ways that start to challenge and complicate in some ways the fairly clean assumptions that we've been dealing with so far. So just to kind of reiterate, right? So the general semantics and serious man kind of position in its sort of naked, pure, raw version is an arrangement of kind of discrete forms, self-contained, static, right? The self, the individual, me, you, yourself, all others. We are all these kind of self-contained entities. And then, of course, there's the external reality, and that's its own kind of self-contained, static thing. And then there's, the knowledge that we gain about that external reality. And if we're doing it right, and if we're doing it well, then the knowledge itself is static, self-contained, reliable, objective. Therefore, our communication and how we talk, our language, and our means of communication, again, ought to be tidy, well-ordered, consistent, uniform, and again, is its own kind of thing. Correspondence theory, right? Myself, yourself, the external world, and our language, they should all resemble one another according to the serious man ideal, right? Now what we're doing, we've been talking about language and thought. Here now we're getting into that kind of language question, which is also the question of mediation, right? Language is how my thoughts mediate into your brain and vice versa, and how we mediate our intentions and our desires to one another. So when we're talking about language, we're talking about a particular form of mediation, linguistic. McLuhan would have plenty to say about that, I'm sure. But here we're thinking about media as technologies, right? So that's probably the first point. And again, just a reminder, I just posted this 30 minutes ago. I just created it this morning. A lot of the stuff that's coming up is new. And so I need to be creating the prompts and the videos as we go, from scratch. But I'll be doing that as I've been proceeding Tuesday mornings, videos and prompts, and that's the content for the week. All right, so this is McLuhan week, and that's an important week. Marshall McLuhan, just to kind of briefly reiterate, if it's not familiar, was a Canadian media theorist. I mention that as a Canadian, he's one of our cultural heroes, frankly, a really major figure, not just in academia, but in the kind of larger social public realm. Marshall McLuhan, the man, actually showed up in a Woody Allen film back when Woody Allen was the king of filmmaking and comedies and intellectual comedies back in the late 70s, early 80s. I think it was maybe Manhattan or Annie Hall. They were waiting in line for a movie, and they were talking about some media kind of thing, and Woody Allen kind of broke the fourth wall and started talking to the audience, and then Marshall McLuhan himself became a part of this scene, and it was this kind of meta move where we're talking about media, and let's refer to the media theorist himself. So he was a big like cultural icon and a major figure, and as a Canadian, we were all well aware of his work. And he's a major media theorist, and still to this day is an important figure in media theory broadly, but also in the kind of the what counts as general semantics today is often referred to as media ecology. And it's a really hard look at mediums in their specific particular technological uniqueness. And so that's the point we're going to start off with here, right? So McLuhan wants to think about mediums. Whenever I read not just student papers, a lot of times it's colleagues' papers, they'll talk about the media, right? And usually it's in a kind of offhanded or disparaging way. But I always wonder to myself, like, what are you actually referring to? The media, right? I think they usually are kind of thinking about mainstream news organizations or newspapers or whatever. But when you think about media and then what it's actually referring to, when you think about a medium, it's anything that's transferring and changing one state to another state, one entity to another entity, right? And McLuhan wants to think about the specific mediums in their particular technological uniqueness and the affordances. That's not really a word that he uses here, but affordance is more recent kind of way of theorizing media in terms of like what it allows and what it prevents. So an affordance is anything that either enables or constrains action possibility. Like a gate affords you passage through the gate when it's unlocked, but it also can block you if it's locked, right? And so it's about blockages and openings. And that language is relevant to the way that he's thinking about mediums because they enable and constrain certain kinds of actions and certain kinds of relations and behaviors and so on, right? So first point on the prompt here, in the first point that's even in the title of his book, is media as extensions of man. So just briefly talk about that. As an extension of man, a medium as a technology is something that enables us to do something that we can't do in our kind of self-contained, limited bodies, right? So these glasses are extensions of my sense of sight. So the glass itself is a medium, right? It's a medium in the sense that it's actually amplifying the world in a way that's necessary and helpful for me. And so thinking about affordance theory, the glasses literally open up my environment. When I take them off, everything's now constrained. So you can think about affordance theory even in relation to these glasses and what they enable and what they don't enable, right? For instance, they don't enable me to wear masks very well. Oh my goodness. Wearing masks with these glasses, maybe it's just my glasses, but they steam up and they're constantly sliding off because of the little band. Maddening. So again, think about the technology and its particular specificness, right? What does this thing, which mediates reality into my brain, what does it open up and what does it close down? That's really in miniature the kind of the exact and total way that he wants to be thinking about media in general, right? Think about any given specific medium. And again, think about it as a technology, as a thing. And everything is a thing. Here is a medium for the conveyance of cold or hot beverages, right? What does it open up? It opens up my ability to be hydrated and therefore to do all kinds of things without having to run back home and get a water or run to a fountain, right? What does it constrain? Well, it's big and clunky and sometimes it's really annoying to carry around and on and on and on. So when you're thinking about a medium, you want to be thinking about it as a specific technology. At the end, he actually compares technologies or mediums to natural resources, right? Think about what you can do if you're cooking or whatever, what you can do with this ingredient versus that ingredient, right? Very different. Sometimes you can sort of substitute them or things are similar, but generally speaking, the example I give on the prompt is if you're frying, I've been doing lots of sort of recipe testing lately and frying chicken with different kinds of flours, rice flour, potato flour, tapioca flour, wheat flour. Every single different flour, and frankly, every single different oil, peanut oil, canola oil, corn oil, olive oil, which you don't want to fry in, they all have their own unique properties and qualities, and they're going to affect the outcome accordingly. And that's really the whole kind of gist of McLuhan's ideas about medium as message. It doesn't matter if you're frying chicken or fish or, a hamburger or tater tots or whatever. The medium, the fat, and the coating will hugely influence the result. That's the point. It doesn't matter what the content is. It doesn't matter the thing inside the medium. The medium itself, hugely. Now, he's going to almost say, totally determines the message, right? And that's a question that we'll want to ask about, how much does the medium shape the message? Is it totally? Is it completely? Or can the content itself maybe work against the form? And what about how it is that we as individuals engage with and use and play and experiment and tinker with media? So we'll get into that, but there's that question of our agency in relation to these technologies, because he's giving them a lot of power. He's seeing them as being sort of determinative. And that's one of the kind of criticisms of McLuhan, is that he's a techno-determinist in the sense that he sees any given media as, inevitably altering how it is that we live together, regardless of the content and regardless of how we decide to use it and engage with it. So, to be honest, there's just a ton of examples in this essay here, and my guess is that because this was published in the early 60s, a lot of these examples are not going to make a bit of sense to you. And so he's got lots and lots of examples, and there's lots of references that you're probably not familiar with, and a lot of them that I wasn't familiar with. And so a lot of it's going to feel quite foreign, right? And so in the prompt, the reading prompt, I'm just trying to draw your attention to some of the examples and key ideas that will likely make the most sense to you. And there's really just a couple of major ideas in this introductory chapter. And the first one is the medium is the message. And I've kind of already described that. He's got lots of examples in there. The example of electric light as being the medium for pure information, right? It's you can't even do things. You can't know anything until you flick on the light. And then, wow, now you can kind of open up and do anything because you can see and know, and there's just pure information coming in, right? Lots of interesting examples. The kind of the sub point to the medium is the message idea is this notion that any given content of a media is another media, right? And so you think about speech. What is the content of speech? It's thought, right? These are the content of the words are just the things that I'm thinking about, right? He says that the content of writing is speech, right? So this stuff, the content, the words on here are really the words that are coming out of my mouth being codified in this kind of new form, right? The content of print, newspapers, magazines, whatever, is the written word, right? And so that's an interesting thought. I'm not sure, I'm not enough of a media theorist to say if this is sort of true across the board, but it's intriguing, this idea that what a medium does is it kind of drags the content of another medium in a way that's even more convenient and kind of alters the delivery of that content in a new way, right? So that's an interesting idea. But the main idea here, the first kind of big main idea is if you want to be thinking about what is the medium of any given message, first of all, think about the technology in its specificity, right? So this big fat computer that I'm talking into is one thing. This ring light over here is another thing. This microphone is yet another thing. This thing here is yet another thing, and it's got a bunch of things inside of it, right? So you can talk about any kind of, or this thing right here. This is another thing. I got a bunch of these kicking around, right? You want to think about each one of these in its own technological specificity. And then you want to ask about its effects. Not what does it say, but what does it do, okay? These things are fantastic devices, technologies, mediums for conveying really technically specific and sophisticated information in ways that you can return to, in ways that are cost efficient for the most part, easy to kind of transport, and da-da-da-da. So when you want to be thinking about the message of this medium, you want to be thinking about how it is that we use it, what it does, right? What its effects are, how we live in relation to this thing. Not necessarily what the words on the page are, that's the content, right? But what does it do? What does it enable me to do, and what does it not enable me to do? Again, that affordance enable, constrain, open up, close down kind of consideration, right? There's lots of things that this enables me to do. There's lots of things that it doesn't really enable me to do. It doesn't enable me to learn this information quickly, I'll tell you that much, right? Assemblages and actor networks, rethinking socio-material power, politics, and space. Yeah, that's not an easy, quick read, for sure. So a McLuhan-esque sort of analysis of media would want to look at any given medium particular, right, singular, in its technological specificity, and it wants to ask about what those technological specificities do, what they accomplish, what they don't accomplish, how they change our kind of patterns of behavior and association. Again, what they open up and what they close down. So we want to always be thinking about the effects and the consequences of a given medium. And we cannot assume that all media, just because it happens to go by the word media, is the same. So not. So, just think about the differences between like Instagram and TikTok, or Facebook and Twitter. These are all social media platforms, but even in and of themselves, they're very, very different. Think about the difference between YouTube and TikTok. I can't stand TikTok, but I love YouTube. But there's also a lot of crap on YouTube that I can't stand. So in any given medium, he doesn't like this idea. He makes fun of this. This is in the general, Sanford or whatever, toward the end. I note this on the prompt. This dude was saying, sorry, I want to find it. Sanford. Sarnoff. This is note number 8, bottom of page 3. So this guy is saying, so McLuhan is quoting Sarnoff here for saying that the products of modern science are not in themselves good or bad. It is the way they are used that determines their value. That guy is saying any given technology is just a thing. And what matters is how we use that thing. McLuhan is like laughing at this dude. He's saying that is hilarious. The thing determines how we use it. And this is sort of the big lingering question, I think, of McLuhan sort of studies, is like, how much of it do we go with McLuhan in the sense that the medium determines the message, and it determines and sort of dictates how it is that we use it? Or can we not sort of freely use our agency and our creative abilities and like hacking and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's a kind of side debate that usually hovers around McLuhan. I just wanted to like draw attention to it, right? This idea that the medium determines the message is a really interesting idea, and there's a ton of truth to it. But we might not want to go like 100% in that direction of like, we are powerless as consumers and users of media. So let's see here. So the first main idea is, of course, medium is the message. The idea of a medium as an extension of our bodies, our senses. And then, of course, the idea that you want to be thinking about media and their specific technological uses and what they enable and open up. The next kind of major idea is number 9 on the prompt, and this idea of reversals. And so here he's thinking kind of historically and how it is that certain media technology give way to other media technology. And it's not so much always like a progressive, getting better, smarter, more advanced kind of thing. It's very much a like, one media technology comes along and it can even like displace or reverse what had existed before. The example of the railroad and the airplane is quite interesting. The railroad, of course, is a very 19th century medium technology. It's a medium because it's literally conveying, goods from here to there. So it's a transfer of information, it's a transfer of things, it's a transfer of connections and relations, even ideas, right? Opening up and connecting at the same time. So the railroad enabled and promoted cities. It promoted the kind of the urban growth and development of this country and the national growth. My goodness, my dissertation was largely on 19th century antebellum national expansion. And it was, for a big chunk of that story, it was about railroads and also canals. Canals was really big back in the 1830s, right? So that's how this country was kind of like stitched together, is through canals and railroads, and then, of course, later roads and the highway system. Now think about the plane. What does the plane do? It kind of combats all that, because instead of sort of like going inward nationally and regionally like the railroad does, it strengthens those kind of internal bonds. The plane kind of smashes all that and pushes everything outward, right? It takes you out of the city to other cities, and so it kind of breaks down these strong bonds, right? This is this idea of reversal, of how one medium, one technology can come onto the scene and completely mess around with the kind of sort of media ecology, or the landscape that was in place already. The other example he gets to at the end there is the sort of transition from mechanization to automation. So you'll want to take a look at that. That is... he starts around 8, I think, in the middle there. He says the electric technology is within the gates. Obviously, mechanization is going back to the 18th century. Mechanizing things is using sort of industrial technologies to create linear... I always just think about the conveyor belt, right? Mechanization is like using tools, gadgets, whatever, to churn out products or objects or things or whatever rapidly, and so you can kind of exponentially grow whatever it is you're trying to do. But everything's sort of segmented, right? Think about a car factory. It's like this thing is all about the engine, and then that thing over there is about the tires, and that's the transmission, and all these different parts, and it just kind of like puts the parts together, or it kind of like smashes them together. So it's very segmented. It's about growth, but it's about kind of segmented bits and pieces kind of getting smashed together. Whereas automation is more about like simultaneity and integration, right? So it's a very different kind of set of associations and behavioral expectations that come from automation versus mechanization. Mechanization was the Industrial Revolution. We are now moving into a digital, like I'm thinking about Amazon here. Amazon uses a lot of mechanization still, but they also use a lot of like kind of digital robotics and automation, and things are just sort of happening on their own. So it's a very different shift, and McLuhan wants us to be very attuned to the consequences and the effects of shifting from a mechanized landscape to an automated landscape. I'm very curious to know what he would say about all of this, media, digital media, social media, the fact that we wear these things on our, bodies, and they're literally just like everywhere around us all the time. Like, how would he be talking about that, I wonder? I mean, clearly it has to do with like our brains, our subjectivities, and how they're being kind of invaded and compromised by all these things that can just kind of enter into our most private, intimate realms. We just yesterday, I don't know if you guys know the Nielsen Corporation. It's the pretty old, actually, generations old, probably going back to around this time. The Nielsen company has been tracking basically television viewing habits, right? And it sort of selects these representative American households, and it asks them if they could sort of get your information in terms of what you watch, right? Because advertisers really want to know. Back before there was chips in everyone's lives, advertisers would ask consumers and viewers to like record what it is they watch, so that that soap company can know that these are the kinds of people that watch these kinds of shows. These are the kinds of people we're trying to sell our soap to. So we need the information about who's watching what, so we can plant our ads on those programs, right? That's kind of the old model. Now the model is they come into your home, they attach some stuff in the back of your TV, and they actually want, I didn't let them, but they want to go inside of your internet itself, right? And so everyone's trying to get inside. If you get inside someone's internet, think about their financial transactions. Now, I'm not accusing Nielsen of going after my financial information, but think about finances, think about health, medical, think about your private interactions, think about the things that you view or watch or read in your kind of private viewing, right? They want all of that stuff. That's this new realm of like privacy invasion. And as someone who's like existed in life before the internet, it really disturbs me still. And I was not letting these guys inside my internet. It disturbs me just how much of our like most intimate private lives are either available because of the surveillance, or a lot of people just sort of offer it up online. It's like, my goodness, we're so accustomed to just sort of spilling our most intimate lives. And so anyway, I think that this is all part of this new media ecosystem. And if we're looking specifically about the kind of technologies and what they're doing and what they're enabling, but also what they're constraining, we could do a very robust McLuhan-esque analysis of our landscape here. In fact, maybe I'll think about that for an assignment. And so that's kind of the gist of this piece. And I don't want to go too long here, 25 minutes. Yeah. So the medium is the message, what that means, this idea of the content of media being another medium, this idea of reversals and how it is that one medium can come in and dominate and take over and can really kind of challenge the habits and patterns of relation of the previous media ecosystem. And clearly we're seeing that with the internet, right? So go through the prompt. I didn't dive deep into the reading because there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm just not hitting on. There's a lot of examples, and it gets a little bit repetitious. But if you use this as your guide, you should be pretty good shape. And I think I've covered the main ideas from McLuhan, the ones that we want to be thinking about, right? So just to kind of wrap up here, thinking about the general semantics, serious man, creature. We're supposed to be oriented extensionally. We're supposed to be very hip and sensitive to the way that information is coming to us. And I think that, McLuhan is a darling of the general semantics because he's asking us to think very specifically about the kind of information that's coming from these mediums. And the better we are able to understand how that stuff's coming at us, and trying to influence us and shape us, then we're better guarded against, the excesses over here, the limitations over there. So it challenges some of the original basic fundamental stuff that we talked about, but McLuhan is pro-general semantics in the sense that he wants us to be thinking hard about that extensional verbal landscape. It's weird, right? Because the verbal was meant to be the representational thing, but it is definitely part of the extensional landscape in the sense that even our mediums, even our language, shape how it is that we perceive the extensional world. And so we got to try to get good on the specific kinds of ways that any given medium can, again, open up or close down possibilities for thought, action, behavior, association, relation. So it's good stuff. And I'm proud as a Canadian to be, reckoning with him still. I first read him as an undergraduate many, many years ago. And I still remember ideas in here, and they're still good. They're still useful. I think he might go a little far in the whole techno-determinism thing. So we want to be asking questions about, what about human agency? What about our ability to oppose or transcend the techno-deterministic powers of any given medium? But in any case, those are some of the main ideas here, and I think we'll be revisiting a fair bit of this as we proceed. There you go, gang. Hope all's well out there, and looking forward to hearing from you. Take care.